Before Europeans arrived, indigenous nations had already lived on this land for thousands of years, thriving with their own laws, governments, and cultures. But by the 18th century, the land that European settlers claimed as colonies was reaching a tipping point. The British colonies were growing rapidly in population, economy, and confidence, yet the Crown imposed strict rules, taxes, and trade limitations. Colonists began to question authority, governance, and what freedom really meant. Newspapers, pamphlets, and secret meetings spread revolutionary ideas like wildfire. Leaders emerged, articulating visions of liberty and self-governance. Yet, the irony was stark. The freedoms they sought rarely applied to indigenous peoples, enslaved Africans, women, or anyone outside the white male property-owning class. This was a world where ideals and reality clashed from the start. Native nations watched the unfolding events with caution and concern. Colonists' arguments over representation and taxation often ignored the fact that these lands were already inhabited. Many native tribes tried to maintain neutrality, while others strategically chose alliances, sometimes with the British, sometimes with the colonists, in a desperate attempt to protect their families and lands. Meanwhile, enslaved Africans lived under constant oppression. Some were forced into labor to build the wealth that fueled the colonial economy. Others seized rare opportunities to fight for freedom. Often in dangerous and morally complex circumstances, the Revolutionary War began with battles at Lexington and Concord, spreading across forests, towns, and fields. Armies marched, cannons fired, and cities were besieged. Families were uprooted, homes destroyed, and communities caught in the crossfire. For native peoples, every movement of armies meant displacement, forced treaties, and more land lost. For enslaved Africans, the promise of freedom was uncertain, and many faced new dangers depending on which side controlled their region. Colonial leaders negotiated, strategized, and even committed acts that would have lasting consequences. Some were celebrated as heroes, others were responsible for decisions that destroyed lives. Revolution was not a simple story of good versus evil. It was messy, violent, and full of difficult choices. Battles raged from the northern colonies to the southern plantations. Civilians were often the first to suffer, with towns burned and farms seized. Yet, amid this chaos, ideas of democracy, liberty, and self-governance took root. Citizens argued over constitutions, laws, and rights. Some believed deeply in freedom for all, though the reality often fell short. The Declaration of Independence proclaimed universal rights, yet indigenous peoples were not recognized, and slavery remained intact. These contradictions highlight the duality of the Revolutionary Era, a fight for freedom built on the oppression of others across the continent. Indigenous tribes resisted in ways large and small. Some fought with European powers against other tribes. Others tried to negotiate peace or relocate to avoid war. Their efforts were often ignored or overridden, yet these actions preserved cultures and traditions that survive today. African and African American contributions were significant. Though largely unrecognized in history books, many fought as soldiers, spies, or laborers. Using whatever means, they had to influence outcomes. Some escaped slavery, others risked death, and a few gained freedom as a reward for military service, but always at tremendous personal cost. While the battles for independence raged, the continent's landscape changed. Farms, towns, and roads expanded. European-style governance, law, and economic systems took root. New borders were drawn, often disregarding the territories of native nations. Colonization intensified in the West, setting the stage for future conflicts. This period also saw the rise of political factions, newspapers, and propaganda. Citizens learned how to debate, organize, and mobilize public opinion, lessons that shaped future elections and governance. Revolutionary leaders like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin are celebrated today, but the stories of those who suffered, Native nations, enslaved Africans, women, and ordinary civilians, are less told. Understanding this era fully means seeing both the ideals and the costs, the victories and the tragedies, and how the birth of a nation depended on complex, often brutal decisions. The Revolutionary Era was a time of contradictions, freedom claimed by some, oppression inflicted on others, new governments established, while old societies were destroyed. It set the pattern for centuries to come: westward expansion, systemic inequality, and the ongoing struggle for justice. By the end of this era, the United States of America had been born. But not everyone living on this land shared equally in its promises. The choices, conflicts, and compromises made during this time shaped the nation profoundly, creating a legacy that continues to influence society today. The story of the Revolutionary Era is a story of courage, conflict, resistance, and survival. It shows us how power, ideals, and oppression intertwined to form the foundations of a nation. This is the untold truth of America, the revolution that built freedom for some while challenging the survival of many others. Next time, we'll explore westward expansion and native resistance. When settlers pushed inland, native nations fought back, and the modern map of the United States began to take shape.